Hello, 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 and a big welcome to one and all. I trust you're okay, or as well as can be expected. Today, we have a brand new thread to Self-Detective Club. It's called The Trouble With... Could be interesting. Could be utter crap. Who knows? It's going to look at things, everyday things, mainstreamy things, through a critical lens, as well as our usual wellness-focused lens. And why are we bothering to do such a thing? Well, how about this? Just because something exists doesn't make it right, or good, or necessary. On the contrary, there's a lot of misery in the world, and it's got to come from somewhere, right? According to the philosopher Bertrand Russell, the secret to happiness is to face the fact that the world is horrible. Are you willing and able to face this proposition, dear listener? If so, let's take a leisurely, meandering stroll through our institutions, our rules and regulations, our shared/unshared cultural values, and see if they stand up to a bit of scrutiny. And please remember, while you're listening, I'm not trying to wind you up or make you agree with me. I might not even agree with me. It's all just playful conjecture. This is just you with your own existing narrative of the outside world, meeting some different concepts, and then seeing how you feel afterwards. Okay, enough. It's example time. The trouble with evolution is it's flawed. We contain all sorts of defects within our DNA, meaning our genes can become corrupted. Collectively, we suffer from intergenerational trauma. We easily become addicted to things thanks to our brain's basic reward system. We are prone to self-sabotage. Once we suffer one trauma, our body becomes absorbed and obsessed by it and prone to alarm system meltdowns whenever we perceive dangers. Evolution seems more interested in keeping us alive than giving us a good quality of life. Have you ever thought of this kind of stuff before? I mean, I hadn't until recently. Before then, I just kind of accepted evolution without question. Like, it is what it is. It's just progression, it's advancement. But then I read something in a sentence, within a paragraph, within an article about something completely different. And at the end of the article, I didn't care anything about the whatever it was. I'm like, hang on a minute. Someone has dared to criticize evolution. Wow. And there's more. Even more alarming is that evolution is incapable of going back to the drawing board. So we end up with layer upon layer of makeshift adaptations, inglorious modifications, and crude tinkerings. If there is a God out there, maybe, rather than praising them, we consider petitioning them to improve upon this cavalier experiment. So are you with me now? Are you getting the gist of the show? Good, because this is merely an introductory session. I'm hoping that some of you will warm to this theme so much, to such a frenzied point that you cannot contain yourselves any longer, and you will delve deep into your own wearisome topic. such as the trouble with advertising, the trouble with mental health, the trouble with religion. Unburden yourself of a trouble, and all the self-detectives around the world will applaud you for your insights and for your sharing. All you need do is make contact with your fellow operative, Simon. That's me. podcast@selfdetective.net. That's podcast@selfdetective.net. And if anyone is in any way hesitant because they don't like the sound of their own voice, can I just say, no one likes the sound of their own voice. But maybe evolution has a reason for this, and we just haven't worked it out yet. Anyway, back to the here and now. Allow me to paint a few more pictures. This is my own doorway into problematics. In 1983, an Australian band called the Triffids recorded an album called Treeless Plains. And on that album, there was a song called Madeline. And in that song, there contained the following lyrics. In an old house in Paris, covered in vines, lived a girl by the name of Madeline. She was not afraid of spiders or mice. Madeline loved winter, snow and ice, snow and ice. And in the middle of the night, Madeline would reach for her bedside light, saying something is not right, something is not right. For the purposes of this troublesome podcast, I can think of nothing more heroic than to have a young, fearless girl forever immortalized in song, waking up to a revelation, an insight, and declaring something to be not right. And I hope, if the mood takes us, we too can enter into this spirit and explore areas of our own lives, our own world, by calling a spade when something is shown to be less than functional. Because the trouble with bullshit is that it represses, suppresses, denies, ignores, and avoids. And yet, as some people will already know, there is something not quite right about this account of Madeline. The song is playing fast and loose with its own tribute to a character which was created in 1939 by the French author Ludwig Bellemans, who wrote this actual account in his beautifully drawn children's books. In the middle of the night, Miss Clavel turned on the light and said something is not right. Little Madeline sat in bed, cried and cried. Her eyes were red. Far from having a eureka moment, poor Madeline had appendicitis. This is the trouble I am now having with wanting to use Madeline as a hero figure when it comes to calling out hitches. Yes, she did it in the song, but she didn't do it in the book. If anything, in all the books she stars in, she's actually a bit of a troublemaker. And yet, maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way. Maybe now I'm the one being difficult. You see, Madeline is growing up in a pretty rigid boarding school, in a pretty heartless and repressive society. The reader of these books are invited to see an unjust world through her eyes, the eyes of a spirited, rebellious orphan. Can we similarly look at our own current world through the eyes of vulnerable people and then decide if something is not right? Can the pursuit of wellness have any meaning if it isn't universally available? For me, for you, for all the Madelines of the world. So just to be clear on what's going to happen next, I'm going to perform a solid block of non-stop j'accusing, swiping, sniping and griping. And if all goes well, far from being passive, you are going to be amused, bemused, ever so lightly poked and prodded so that your morality can be engaged, enraged and ignited. Maybe. Ready? How about we start in earnest with people? The trouble with people is we do not take the time to find out what makes us tick. And in doing so, we become a danger to ourselves and to others. We are a walking, talking time bomb. Add sugar, fat, alcohol, drugs into our system. Add vehicles, add inequalities and add hierarchies, add religion, give us jobs with power over others, and boom! What a mess. What a grotesque spectacle. And then some of us have children, and we use them as a scapegoat for our own interpersonal difficulties. And then we grow old and bitter and dump our hate-filled baggage onto the next generation. Classy. The trouble with people is that they are so easy to be subjugated. Hell, they even vote to see who gets to subjugate them. What is all that about? They buy into dogmas and dodgy ideologies that don't even serve their own self-interests. Then they vote and they help sow the seeds of division. They create winners and losers. What's that about? Since when is governance best served up as a competition? Crazy stuff. Imagine being an old, miserable bastard and voting for a nasty bastard political party and then dying the next day. Imagine being young and not being able to vote and having to live with the consequences of miserable bastard voting for the rest of your life. Imagine growing up believing that voting is equal and fair and then finding out that women had to resort to terrorism to get the bloomin' vote for themselves. At least they did here in the UK. I wonder how many women nowadays feel obliged to vote because historically some women died for the right to vote, even though voting helps to keep women suppressed and subordinated, because it helps keep the status quo, and the status quo is patriarchy all the way. Crazy. And then imagine, if you can, what the suffragettes would have made of this 100 years later. One singular binary woman, a Scottish wizarding expert no less, has just splashed out a handy sum of money to help turn her belief system into a reality for an entire nation. Because you can do that in a democracy, regardless of gender. You can participate in perfectly legal and legitimate acts of pretty close to corruption without being corrupt, as well as blatant acts of inequality. Here's what the singer of Ball Boy had to say about it. It was the £1 million that did it, that flourishing of £1 million donation, as if her vote wasn't just a vote, but 1 million votes, or a better vote, or maybe just a richer person's vote. That's what tipped me over, because I'd paid for that vote a little bit. I even bought the books with the proper covers, not the ones designed for adults. So I guess I paid for that part of a vote, and I don't have £1 million to spend on my vote. I think we all know if I had £1 million, I'd do something more exciting with it. Which leads us on to the trouble with money. And the trouble with money is that it's debt all day long. And the trouble with debt, it puts you in deficit, makes you beholden to something or someone. Oh God, thank you so much for creating me and the world around me. How can I ever repay you? By worshipping me, of course. Oh, and by rendering unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Oh, parents, you also made me. How can I ever make this up to you? By following our values and our beliefs, and becoming all the things that we failed to do in our lifetime. Oh, employer, thank you so much for employing me. How can I thank you enough? By making me lots of money so that I can pay for a big house, big holidays, and put my kids through private school so that they can learn to be entitled and dominate others just as I do. Gratitude? My arse. By the way, if you think I only have a downer on democracy, let me ask you this. How come communism has never worked on a big scale? How come when it gets to the part where the revolutionaries are supposed to hand over power to the masses, they always find reasons not to do so? This is the trouble with power. No, nobody wants to give it up once they get it. But then again, didn't the Arab Springs show just what you can do when you've had enough of tyrannical power? For a brief moment, that is. And then the Arab Spring showed us what not to do, which is to give this hard-fought people power away again to another group of knackers who, in time, will become just as tyrannical as the previous hoodlums. This being 2026, is anyone else looking at what's happening in Rojava, the democratic autonomous administration of North and East Syria? Is anyone else looking and saying, crikey, that's real democracy, that's true democracy in action in our own very lifetime? That's freedom and equality right there, right now. If you have never heard of this place before, where are you getting your news from? Or perhaps it is more pertinent to ask, where are you not getting your news from? That's the trouble with news. It's just that ever so little bit selective, isn't it? Here in the UK, we have the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, sometimes referred to as Auntie Beeb, although I have to say, this is like no aunt I've ever experienced. The trouble with the Beeb is that its core mission is, quote, due impartiality. It actually believes it can report objectively and reflect a wide range of views, while being a corporation set up by the state via a royal charter. For crying out loud, Mary, Mother of Jesus, there is not a chance they can ever be impartial. Not a chance. To say otherwise is incredibly dishonest and disrespectful. Does anyone remember this interview between the BBC journalist Andrew Marr and Noam Chomsky? Ma, how can you know I'm self-censoring? Chomsky, I'm not saying you're self-censoring. I'm sure you believe everything you say. But what I'm saying is, if you believed something different, you wouldn't be sitting where you're sitting. This conversation took place in 1996. In a web chat in 2017, he is asked about this moment by the charming username StinkNormal. At this point in the interview, your reaction suggested that the proverbial penny had dropped for you regarding your role as, with respect, a cog in the well-oiled propaganda machine. So I'm curious to know whether this exchange with Chomsky was an epiphany for you regarding your own journalism. Ma replies, the conversation was taking place in the context of me expressing disbelief in his view that all mainstream journalists were essentially the same. I had said that it seemed to me The Guardian and The Telegraph posed very different worldviews, and that journalists varied hugely in their own politics and temperament. Oh my days. Oh my giddy aunt. So once again, 21 years later, a top BBC journalist is unable to see that mainstream journalism is essentially singing from the same cultural hegemonic song sheet. He is able to see variance within a stream, but unable to see that the stream is nothing compared to the breadth of views within an ocean, not least the dissent you only find in dark depths, rather than shallow waters. This is the 3 O's: orthodoxy, orthodoxy, orthodoxy. And these are my 3 Y's: yawn, yawn, yawn. I have watched BBC News for over 50 years. I have never encountered my own views, my own standpoint. Not seriously, not for any length of time. To my ears at least, it delivers the same normative, authoritative, corporate drone, whatever colour the newsreader might be. Compromised, sanitized, an utterly banal rendering of human affairs. The same pattern goes for notions of equality, diversity and inclusion, aka EDI. Here's some words from Kavita Bunuat from her article Decolonize, Not Diversify. Quote, the concept of diversity only exists if there is an assumed neutral point from which others are diverse. Putting aside for now the straight, male, middle-classness of that neutral space, its dominant aspect is whiteness, constructed by a white establishment. The idea of diversity is neoliberal speak. It's the new corporatized version of multiculturalism. It is about management, efficiency, box ticking. End quote. In 2011, 2 top footballers insult one another on a pitch of grass. One says something derogatory about the privates of the other player's sister, while the other responds by insulting the colour of the skin of the original insulter. Do I need to say which one got an 8-match ban and which one got off scot-free? Apparently, there There is no room for racism in football, but there is plenty of room for misogyny and homophobia. This is the trouble with single-issue politics. This is the trouble with human rights. In a sick, dysfunctional society, bands of people will strive to climb above others, even if, like mushrooms, they all live in the same oppressive shit pile. Okay, moving sideways, the Mid-Staff's report of 2010 is one of the most shocking tales of institutional woe. It taught us that centralised bodies setting targets on care workers can have catastrophic results. That if nurses can no longer do the empathic and the compassionate parts of their jobs, because they are now having to hit ticky box objectives, there will be a whole trail of soiled, dehydrated patients left unattended in beds. And all because the Mandarins didn't factor in humanity into their time and motion studies. Who would have thought that if you take the humanity out of the framework of rules and regulations, laws and orders, you are left with inhumanity? Here's some Laurie Anderson lyrics from her song, "Oh Superman," to add to the mix. Because when love is gone, there's always justice. And when justice is gone, there's always force. And when force is gone, there's always Mom. Hi, Mom. So hold me, Mom, in your long arms, in your automatic arms, your electronic arms, your petrochemical arms, your military arms. You might have heard me say this before, but for me it's always worth repeating. In the 20th century, 262 million people were killed by their own governments. Something is not right, and that's the trouble. Okay, and pause. It feels like we've reached a fine old peak of utter wretchedness. So can I propose, rather than leave us all stranded on this ridge, we go back to base camp and do a little debrief? So here's a few more quibbles while we are abseiling down. I briefly worked for a major mental health charity. When I joined, they were in the process of rebranding. They were taking the time to justify how certain pay grades equated to various levels of skills needed for different roles. So, to be a Band 6 CEO, you needed to have a truly amazing array of communication skills, like super woozy. And for having the gift of the gab, you are rewarded with super big bucks. Whereas Band 1, the majority of the workforce, the mental health support workers, well, they only needed to grunt to pass their communication requirements. And for that, they got paid pennies. Why is this a problem? Why is this an insult to our intelligence? Because when you are faced with someone who is in the throes of a drug-induced psychotic episode, and they are seeing daggers coming out of their bedroom wall, grunting is not going to cut it. So screw your rebranding, screw your justifications, and screw your gaslighting. Is this just me, or is this pretty Orwellian? You know, like, war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength, emotional intelligence is for epsilons. I saved a life once, being at the coalface. I won't say I did great, but I did enough. I was good enough to see the signs and react. Despite being stressed out by financial hardships. I don't think many CEOs are in the right place to save lives. They are far too important for that. Moving on, I look at my own profession, counselling, and I can see a lot of problems there too. I can see that in one sense, all we are really doing is mopping up the ills of society. I wonder sometimes what would happen if we all withdrew our labour. The fantasy being that rather than enabling people to barely exist in an unfair world, they would take their suffering onto the streets and bring about some meaningful social change. But, I don't know. But what I do know is that my professional body thinks that it has vetted me and has bestowed upon me the title of being an accredited member without actually ever setting eyes on me. Yes, I sent in some paperwork. I could have written it, but then again, someone else could have written it. They will never know. And yes, I tick a box every year to say that I am adhering to an ethical framework. And yes, they charge me for this privilege of ticking this box once a year. So at the very least they know, or they think they know, that I am alive, that I have a pulse, which is something, I guess. But here's what sticks in the throat. They promote the idea to their customers that their counsellors can be trusted thanks to a robust regulatory process, even though they have never met these people that are under their wings. Crazy. Dr. H. Shipman was also regulated by the General Medical Council. He killed around 230 patients over a 27-year period. He could have killed more were it not for greed, what with him being a respected pillar of society. It's an inconvenient notion to say that the only real way you can regulate people is to regularly observe them, to hear them speak, hear them account for their practice. In essence, having peer supervision. Anything less is bullshit, which is what we've got at present. We've reached the lower stages now. Can we start to be a bit more light-hearted? Small talk. What's wrong with small talk? Well, the problem with small talk is that it goes nowhere. It's designed to go nowhere. It purposefully blocks out any chance of anything being significant. If anyone is doing small talk, they don't care about the other person. Clearly, they are talking at someone rather than with them. They are keeping their personality at a safe distance, well away from scrutiny. There is no risk to small talk because there is no interest, because there is no relevance to it. It's pitiful. It's the relational equivalent of voting every 5 years and thinking you are part of a democratic process. This is the Argentine footballer Jorge Valdano speaking in 2004 after a deadly, dull football game between Liverpool and Chelsea. football is made up of subjective feeling, of suggestion, and in that, Anfield is unbeatable. Put a shit hanging from a stick in the middle of this passionate, crazy stadium, and there are people who will tell you it's a work of art. It's not. It's a shit hanging from a stick. Jorge, thank you. I will use this to visualize small talk evermore. Can we now turn our attention onto words in general? The trouble with words is that they aren't very expressive. They aren't great for wellness-focused fiends because there's not a lot of wordage to actually play with. Oh, I feel better now. My tension has been released. A weight has lifted from my shoulders. Ah, right, so you are using the language of hydraulics to explain what is going on in your internal world. Are you a transformer in disguise? Right, nearly done. Just 4 steps to go. The trouble with justice? It's an abstract noun. The trouble with P-O-R-N is that you can't even say the word without being spammed. The trouble with online reviews is that sometimes they cause nervous breakdowns. Just popped in one evening with my partner for a quick pint. This is not a review. I don't know what this is. I don't even want to think about the hows and whys of this statement. But please stop doing it. It's making my brain scrunch. And finally, the trouble with Santa Claus is that he gives more toys to rich children than he does to poor children. And that's not a good look, is it? Is it? Okay, we're done. Time to breathe. Time to debrief. So how was that for you? Okay? Mediocre? Bad? Do you think next time, when we really come to focus on a particular trouble in lots of detail, we might also look to find solutions to these problems? I think so. I also think an episode called Alternative Ways of Being might be pretty cool too, as well as a show called Reasons to be Cheerful. Okay, that's it for now. Hope you found some takeouts, and as ever, I wish you well until next time. Bye for now.